have the talk. I wouldn't have a dime. How enjoyable. I mean, it's so, you never see a movie very often when you see so many natural moments. I could have transposed myself and my sister a lot in that film, and a lot of the relationship moments they have with their parents, with the step-parents and all that. I gotta ask though, the big question, you had the same actors for 12 years. How do you keep everybody together?
Well, keeping everybody together was, everybody wanted to be there, but getting schedules together was kind of like juggling kitty cats and chainsaws at the same time, because we had a lot of different elements to it. But, I think one of the exceptional things about the film, what you were saying, is that it's great how, no matter what your background or your upbringing was, there's something in there that you can relate to. It's really heartwarming that way.
Well, how do you keep everybody on the same page? Because you're telling a story of people that we've gotten to know over 12 years in the course of 2.5 hours. But over 12 years, you shot for 49 days. I mean, I can tell you, I've got a cousin I've only seen for 49 days over the last 12 years, but I didn't pack that much into that relationship like you guys had to. How do you keep that energy going where there's that cohesiveness, like they are a family and they work together so well?
Well, I think that's the anomaly that is Richard Linklater. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's, there was a lot of collaboration in the film, there was a lot of what all the actors brought to it, what Rick brought to it from his own childhood, and, you get that sense in there. And I mean, the film isn't really, it really has a lot to do with like time and memories and, and how you feel about that in your own childhood and what that meant to you. And, and I mean, it made me even re-examine for myself, like my own relationship with my own daughter, and my own feelings about motherhood. But I think that, there's this whole element of time kind of like as an additional character in the film. Like you have, and when you get to see somebody's life just kind of flash before you in just over 2.5 hours, can really be a moving experience. I don't know.
Before I send it to the floor, and then I think you have another announcement to make.
Oh, we have a guest tonight. If you would welcome Ellar. Where are you? Yeah. Ellar Coltrane is here.
The big question, Ellar, and I'll hand you my microphone. Oh, what a gentleman. The big question is, what's it like watching yourself transform like that? Because as an audience, sometimes we got to see Harry Potter kind of grow up, but we really saw you grow up without all the magic tricks.
I mean, I don't know that I really can watch myself transform. It's very surreal, but it's different watching the other actors. Like I feel like I definitely, especially I just watched it this time, and it was really interesting watching the other actors change and watching the dynamics between the different characters and just the actors on the screen or behind the screen. Kind of the dynamics changing as it went on, but I also just noticed how different it is watching myself than because I can't see myself aging the same way that I can other people. It's more like a.
You want this one?
It's more like a series of images in a strange way, but I don't know. It's very very. Confusing.
Well, I like watching the transformation. Do we have another mic up there so we can start
Well, I'm up here, Gayle,
All right.
and I'm wondering, does anyone have a question for Kathleen or Ellar? Let's talk about this amazing movie that we just saw. Oh, here we go. Right up here.
Hi, I'm just curious how much of that was ad-libbed versus how much was scripted?
None of it was ad-libbed on camera. It was all written, you know, all the dialogue was written, but almost all of the dialogue was kind of collaborated on by the entire cast, really. So I think that's why it kind of feels like it could be ad-libbed and feels, you know, very conversational and kind of improvised at times.
Can I just say, I was really hurt when you didn't get the GTO because I like muscle cars. I was devastated. I thought you should have got the car. I mean, because as a child, haven't we all at one point told our parents, but you said 20 years ago that you were going to buy me a 911, and I'm still waiting on that 911 my dad promised me.
I think Lorelai still feels that way. It's actually Rick's car, and I think she might have been promised it at some point.
Any other questions up front?
So to kind of piggyback off of her question about the ad-lib and improv, was this script and the development of the script, was this done over the course of the 12 years, or was this something that was pretty much, yeah, this is probably more a Kathleen question, but is this something that was kind of set in stone, or did you guys kind of, did you know if Richard kind of, you know, rewrote as you guys went on over the years?
Well, there wasn't any rewriting, because that would mean writing it in advance. So it was actually, there was a whole story that he had, and there was a synopsis and a you know, a complete outline for the 12 years. But he wrote it each year before as we went along. And, you know, there are some things that you see in there that we kind of included that you couldn't have scripted that because you can't write the future and know that the iPhone is going to come out. You know, I mean, there were things that, like, you know, come along as the story comes along. And there's a sort of fluidity to it. I mean, there was a little bit of an organic process in this as the story developed and got more defined. Rick always had in his mind where the story was headed, but, you know, that doesn't mean that he didn't, like, you know, keep his mind open to things.
Yeah, I was wondering, as the actor, was there a sort of image or an idea that Richard and you talked about or that he told you about in the younger years that you sort of kept in your mind and you'd go back to every time you guys got back together to kind of like help stay in the character or kind of stay in that?
I mean, not really, not in my mind anyways. I mean, my kind of image of what the project was definitely unfolded as it went on. You know, I mean, at the first couple of years, I don't really remember having much of any idea what was going on. But I think, you know, that process and that image became more defined definitely as I became more kind of invested in, you know, in the project.
Who else has a question? I have a question. And I have the mic right now, I guess. Ellar, was there some special time while you were filming or that you see in the film that to you was like, you know, just a magical moment for you that you'll always keep with you?
I mean, it really is the final moment, that sunset out there, because that was our final moment of filming as well as the final moment of the film, and it was that, you know, it was incredibly emotional on the day, and it's like that. What I feel watching it now is very similar to what I felt in that moment, and it was very bittersweet. You know, to bring all of this to a close after so long, but I mean, I think I'll always remember that. It's kind of indescribable exactly why, but I learned something very, very meaningful to me.
Kathleen, how did you keep such continuity? Because you couldn't predict who was going to win a presidential election, and we kind of got some glimpses of that, but, you know, in terms of what they wore, where they lived, I mean, something could have been torn down that you guys would have needed later on, you know, with, you know, city improvements and all that. How did you manage to keep all that together?
Well, we were fortunate, and we were also very cautious in how we picked certain locations. But you know, one of the houses that we used was a family that just randomly we found their house, and they loved us enough to let us keep coming back. You know, it was amazing. Another one of the houses was an actual friend within the film industry that we knew that they would be on board with us. But you know, you always kind of crossed your fingers and hoped for the best as far as like production details go and those kind of things, like, you know, that nothing go wrong and that everything was there. It was a, we keep saying this, but it was a big leap of faith, you know, to like make this project and then go, okay, this is all going to work out, right? You know, but it did. I mean, it fortunately did.
Well, I love the fact that this is actually a coming-of-age movie where you see somebody actually come of age, and it's kind of like living history, because there's so much stuff going on where I could hear like people chuckle in the audience when we would see stuff that, like when we first saw him Skyping with his dad on the phone. Skyping hadn't even been thought of when you guys started this movie, and it's kind of looking at a living history moment on the screen.
Yeah, and those moments are small, like everything else in the film. I mean, the film isn't about big moments in your life. It's, you know, it's really about just the smaller things that kind of connect you to your memories of growing up and what that meant to you, and what are the things that you sort of latch onto and keep, and, you know. And it's not always the big moments that you remember. You know, it can be the small things that stay with you.
Yeah, my question is actually, for early on in the movie, you had to go through, have that haircut. You look like you did not enjoy that at all.
He was supposed to look like he wasn't enjoying it.
Was that actually part of the script, something that you were anticipating that you'd have to go through, or is that just a very unpleasant moment?
No, I actually, I was very, very happy about it. They had asked me to grow my hair out so that they could cut it off, and I wanted to cut it off. So I certainly was anticipating it, but I don't know. I guess I'm good at looking pissed off because.
Real quickly though, that's a good question, because you spent your childhood having to do stuff for this movie. Were there things besides having to get your hair, like having to grow your hair out when you wanted to have it cut, and other things in your life that you had to, you know, not do because of this?
Not really. No, I mean, that was really the only thing, and that was kind of a debacle, so they didn't, I wasn't really asked to do much after that. It is, you know, in that, as far as restricting myself or something, but no, I mean, I called Rick before I pierced my ears, and if I had decided to get tattoos or something, I probably would have asked, but for the most part, it kind of, you know, Rick always made it pretty clear that wherever I went, you know, the character would more or less follow. It's not like I was trying to stay in character for 12 years.
So
I know some people who do.
you got involved with this at a very young age. What's your future from an acting standpoint? Will you continue on?
I definitely want to. I don't know, but I'm open and ready.
I was just wondering, did you have a set time frame each year that you would do the filming? Like, did you get together like every June and film for 3 weeks, or how did that come about?
No, we had 49 shoot and a couple of travel days over the course of the 12 years. So if you average that out, it was about 4 days a year, which was not set in stone. And like I said earlier, like getting people together was, you know, kittens and chainsaws. So it was always sort of sporadic what time of year that would fall into. So there were a few times where we kind of made the choice of like, oh, we'd like this to be something that's in the fall or in winter time. We haven't seen, you know, but it was not like every June. It wasn't, you know, on the dot.
How did you find Ellar for this project? You were wonderful, by the way.
Ellar was culled from a cast of children. He auditioned and.
How many callbacks?
how many callbacks? I don't know. I mean, there was a long process in you know, in finding the perfect child, which we found, obviously, because he's, you know, he's perfect. But yeah, it was. There was a quality about him that, you know, everybody fell in love with. So.
Ellar, what was your most rewarding moment during this time period of filming?
Yeah, it was the full penetration scene just prior to the morning in the dorm. No.
The walk of shame scene.
Can't tweet that. I don't know. I all of it really. There was you know, like I kind of said, my investment in the project deepened definitely as we went on, and just I think the point when I realized how meaningful it was to work on a project like this, you know, that was the most meaningful moment, I think. I mean, it depends entirely.
The question was, did he have an emotional process he had to go through to get back into character since they only met a couple times a year?
I mean, for the most part, a lot of the character and what the character would be going through in a given year was, yeah. So I mean, it was a long process, you know, that kind of was very gradual each year, kind of building up to the shoot. So it wasn't as much trying to figure out how to put myself in the character, but just kind of creating the character each year, and you know, crafting what emotions I was going to be trying to emulate, I guess.
Question over here.
Was this film like a 12-year secret, or were you able to tell people like, oh, in 10 years I've got this movie coming out? How did that work out?
Yeah, did you talk about it a lot? I don't know.
I mean, I tried not to, but I wasn't sworn to secrecy or anything.
We were a little under the radar for a while. We tried to stay under the radar. I mean, it's not something you want to kind of toss out there, you know, like, hey, I'm going to make this public. You know, it was a little. It was on the down low for a while. You know.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I wanted to tell people about it a lot, but as I got older, I became a lot more bashful, and kind of, I would have these relationships with people for like years and then realize that I had never told them that I'm working on this project.
My own mother didn't know I was the producer on this film, which is not anything to do with anything but other than my mother.
Let me tell you what it's like being on a national TV show and your cousin doesn't know. Then you get a call from jail, but that's another movie altogether.
I have a question for Kathy. Early in the film, young Mason asks Big Mason, are you working, Dad? And his response was, tell your mom I passed the first 2 actuarial exams. Now, I'm not sure that has a lot of audience recognition, but what inspired that as a career choice by Big Mason?
That was, I think, just as part of the character, was that, you know, this was if you look at Mason Sr.'s character, you know, he was that guy that goes off and leaves his kids, and he goes out to Alaska, and, you know, he's trying to sort of, whatever, get away, find himself, and that eventually his character, you know, all the characters in this, the kids and the adults do a lot of growing up during the film. I mean, everybody's growing up, you know, not just the kids, and including the adults, you know, kind of figuring out how to be parents. And that was just part of the character development of, you know, he finally became, as he says in the end, you know, that guy that she wanted in that boring guy, you know, whatever, that she wanted in the beginning, you know, whatever. But, I mean, nothing against insurance, my gosh, no.
Hi guys, the movie was beautiful. I had this image in my head of what I thought it was going to be, and to see how seamless the progression was so cool, and just, wow. My question is, people in Hollywood throw out a lot of crazy ideas, and I think, knowing the movie now, it sounds so cool, but before, it seems kind of crazy to say, like, hey, let's make a movie over 12 years. So I'm just curious from Richard's perspective, it was a leap of faith, like you said, but kind of how you got everybody on board to do it.
Well, we're not really Hollywood. I don't know if everyone knows, but we all live in Austin, Texas. And Rick lives there, Ellar lives there, I live there. I mean, you know, this was really an Austin film. I mean, it was done with local crew members, and I mean, even Ethan was born in Austin, Texas. I don't know if anybody knows that, but yeah. It was, yeah, the idea was kind of crazy, and Rick came up with this crazy idea, and sometimes crazy works. I mean, he went to Ethan about it, and Ethan was like, man, that's crazy, let's do that. You know, so it wasn't that hard to get people on board with it, because it's a fascinating idea. I mean, it hadn't been done before, and it was intriguing to almost anybody that, you know, got involved in it, and that's, you know, why we were all there.
Hi, so we watch you grow up on screen, but the one thing we don't see is what must have been one of the biggest things in your life during that process, which is making the film. So how did making the film change you over that period?
Very much, and in ways that I can't quite wrap my head around. I thought a lot just tonight about kind of the parallels between how I changed the character and how the character changed me, you know, simultaneously. And I don't know, I certainly can't put my finger on it, but it was an incredible experience that, you know, undoubtedly made me the person that I am in a lot of ways.
Ellar, did your life parallel the movie in any way? Could you talk briefly on your family, your brothers and sisters, your mother and father? Did it parallel the movie at all? And a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, very, very little, actually. I was homeschooled. I was an only child. My parents were married until I was 10. They were both artists. So yeah, I mean, me and the character got older, there are more similarities, but it's actually very, very different, and that's part of what was kind of so bizarre about filming it, you know, throughout my whole life growing up, especially not being in school and not really having that kind of a peer group, was just kind of going and like pretending like I was a normal kid for a week.
Gabby, I have one last question, if I can. So, Ellar, have you seen the script for the sequel, Manhood, that Richard is working on?
It's written on napkins.
Anyone else have any other questions up here? I think we have time for one more. Is that okay, Gabby?
Yes.
Thanks for running.
Gabby's my nickname, in case any of you thought he was talking to somebody who doesn't exist.
Do you have a distributor, or what's the next steps for the project?
The film is being released in the U.S. and internationally on July 11th. Universal International is releasing it overseas, and IFC is releasing it here.
This is the part where you go on Facebook over 4th of July weekend, and you tell everybody, hey, there's this movie coming out that you really need to go see with your older teenagers, and tell people who don't go to the movies that they need to go see this, because I think they'll enjoy it. And thank you guys so much for coming. What a nice time. Thank you everybody for being here and for hanging in for the Q&A. Appreciate it.
And thank all of you for coming out to the 2014 Phoenix Film Festival. Closing night, it's just so sad, but we're going to do this again in 2015. Thank you guys so much for coming out to Phoenix and enjoying this evening with us. See you next year, everybody. Thank you.